Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's speaker series. I know we've had a couple of weeks off in terms of speaker series, but wanted to fit one more in before the end of the year. So this one is very targeted to the provider audience. The topic, as you can see, is you've got the tech installed, what could possibly go wrong? So my prior experience setting this up at a provider, I used to say that actually doing the assessment and getting the stuff installed was the easy part. That's not entirely true, but it's not untrue to say that there's a lot of work to do after the installation is done. Because technology, whether as much as we love it and as much as we use it day to day, sometimes doesn't work for one reason or the other, and can be challenging to resolve. And if you just think about for a moment your household, right, or your family unit or your friend unit, you probably have somebody you lean on to fix a tech problem at home, right? And you might be that person. In my household, I'm that person. You might be that person for your household, or you might need that person on a regular basis. And if you start to think about these installations we're doing and putting technology in at 2 locations, 3 locations, 10 locations, 20 locations, and being the point person for questions about what happens at each of those locations, I mean, this gets to be potentially a lot of work to keep things running and working properly. So this whole presentation is about what to look for ahead of time to limit the problems you're going to encounter, what to do when you're faced with technology problems, and then ways to strengthen your team. The team around you, your adjacent partners at your agency or at the vendor or the internet service provider, right? It's just how do you strengthen those connections so that as a team, you can keep things running more effectively. So if this hopefully speaks to you, and hopefully you're able to gather a lot of information out of it. Just quickly, some of the things you're going to learn, and I talked a little bit about them already, but things to look for before you even do the installation. Who do you need to have on speed dial? Who do you need to be able to contact? Some preventative maintenance stuff, a little bit on security and logins and managing all of that across multiple locations. Your own help desk, which might be a one-person deal, or it might be some form of your IT team, and having a backup plan. We're going to talk about all those as we get going. So let's kind of start up before the installation. So one of the important things when you go in and you do the assessment of the individual, I'm going to back that slide up just a second. When you go in to do your assessment with the individual, like, we're teaching you to go in with a greenfield approach. You are looking at that person holistically, looking at their environment holistically. You're trying to start from scratch a little bit, asking very basic questions about what that person does on a day-to-day basis and what's challenging to them and what do they wish could happen. And you're there asking a lot of questions and collecting a lot of information. What I'm gonna add a few more questions into that, which are going to make sure that this greenfield that you're building, in terms of the assessment you're doing, is also you're informing yourself about what the technology landscape looks like in the home. So as you're doing your assessments, while you're there on site, do a walkthrough of the whole house. You may be doing this as part of your assessment as well, because you kind of want to know, like, what is the person's routine? How many steps or how difficult is it to get up to the bathroom, that sort of thing. So from a technology perspective, it's, do they have internet and is it reliable? So ask the family members, the caregivers, the beneficiary, how often does it go out? Or do somebody yell, hey, the internet's out? So get a sense, is this stable internet connection or is it not? And we all know in some of the more rural areas that can be a real challenge. Where is their internet router located, and will you have easy access to it, or somebody who has to come in and fix something going to have easy access to that internet? Is the Wi-Fi reliable? And I don't mean like if you're standing next to the Wi-Fi router, can you get a connection? But I mean through the whole house. So it's not unusual in all of our houses, I think, right, to have just situations where you're too far away from the Wi-Fi, or there's a solid wall that's kind of separating rooms that makes the Wi-Fi, or the basement to the second floor, there's no Wi-Fi signal stability. And that Wi-Fi is needed quite a bit. So let's say you're working with a sensor system, right, for doors or windows or motion detectors, sort of thing. All of those need to report back to a central hub in the home, and that is typically done through some form of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. There's a lot of different ways that can happen. So you really need a really stable Wi-Fi throughout the house. And I will say, in some cases, even outside the house. So let's say you're installing a Ring doorbell camera. That needs to be able to connect to the Wi-Fi, and that's going to be outside the front door. And my experience is it's probably 50-50 that you're going to maintain a good Wi-Fi connection outside the front door or the back door for that Ring camera. So all of that stuff about Wi-Fi, literally walk around your house with your phone, or ask the person, probably even a better way to do it, where can't you get Wi-Fi in the house? And then there's solutions for that, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. Where are the electrical outlets, and are there any available? You're going to need to plug stuff in. A lot of the stuff that you plug in for the technology solutions is stuff that should not be unplugged. And many of the homes that I've worked in are not, let's say, set up for modern electronics. I think the code up here, new builds in Philadelphia area is outlet every 8 feet. I'm making that up, but it's something close to that. Go into a home like mine, which is over 100 years old, wasn't built that way for sure. So when you need to start plugging a lot of stuff in, and folks already have a lot of stuff plugged in, you need to make sure there's some accessible outlets. I can't tell you how many times I've seen something that looks like this picture on the right-hand side going on. What I can tell you will happen for sure when that's the situation, first off, you hope no fire or anything goes on. Somebody's going to be unplugging something from there to plug something else in. And, it's going to be a piece of equipment you need. So make sure you understand the electrical lay of the land as well before you get out there. And then, is there anything at the residence that is broken? And so, you're going to have probably a wide variety of locations, some older and maybe not in the best repair, some newer and kind of shined up nicely. The reason I say this, don't assume things are working properly. So you go to put a sensor on a back door to meet some outcome, right, with technology, and you order it and you go to install it, and the person says, oh, the back door actually doesn't work, or it doesn't stay shut, or the lock is broke, right? So all of those sort of things. Sometimes those are hard to tease out, and they don't always inform you of stuff that is pertinent to what you're doing, but it's better to kind of ask those questions before you do an installation, because you can save yourself some time. Specific example I'll give is we bought an electronic door opener. There's actually a remote. It's August is the company. It's a remote door lock. So it can be unlocked by a staff member remotely if necessary. It could be or caregiver. And they had a non-standard door, so it just became complicated to get that installed properly because the door thickness was not what, I assumed it would be. It's really simple stuff like that, but that all of a sudden turns into an extra trip out there, and nobody wants to do that. And then if you're renting, if this apartment or building is rented, do you need approval? Does the landlord or whoever owns the property manager need to bless things like drilling into a wall inside or outside, making a modification to the door lock, swapping out the door lock, those sort of things. So just make sure you're staying within your lease. And my experience is most of our landlords were accepting of us making changes within reason, and we didn't need to get them approved, but it's always good to know the situation before you start doing anything to alter the property in any way. So those are some tips for that first walkthrough and some questions that you should ask. All right, and then the whole sense of make sure you're not trying to do this all alone. Number one, you're not going to be able to fix all the issues yourself because those issues are going to belong in other spaces. And secondly, you're going to need to coordinate with other teams to make sure you're following their guidelines, right? And the way things should be set up. For example, your IT team, they have some security measures and such in place. But first and foremost, when you're putting in these installs, make sure you know who the internet service provider is. And you want to capture, and you can do this simply on a spreadsheet, right? For each location, capture the information, make sure that spreadsheet is secure, right? So you only have access to it. But what's the account number for the ISP? Because if you're there and the internet's down, or the internet's down and you get called, if you or the person who's helping fix this needs to interact with the ISP, they're going to ask for the account number. They're going to ask whose name the account's under. You should know who's paying the bills. Is it your organization? Is it the individual? And is the bill up to date? I've seen that happen as well, where I call in for support and they're in arrears by a couple of months, and support isn't as accessible. But all those sort of things can happen. They're not common, but they can happen. Make sure you know where the internet router is located. What's the router's name? What's the Wi-Fi password to that router? What's the admin for the router? So if you actually need to go in for any reason and make a change to the configuration, unlikely, but I've seen instances where that's had to happen. You should get all of that information, right, and store it in a place where you have access to that info from anywhere, right? So you should put it on a Google Drive that's secure, so only you have access to it. But you want to be able to pull that up from your phone. You want to be able to pull that up from your desktop. Anywhere that you might be caught, you might be out at the location. You need to get that information. So just make sure it's accessible to you. You want to have a good relationship with your IT team, right? And want to know, are they responsible for anything at that residence? If the internet goes down, do they interact with the ISP, or is that not in their purview? If the Wi-Fi goes down at that residence, is that anything that they deal with? So basically, what can they help fix and what can't they help fix? And there's no right or wrong answer to it. Most organizations, draw some sort of a line as to what they're responsible for, and then what the location itself is responsible for. So just set those clear guidelines with your IT department and know who to call for those things that they can fix. Obviously, the staff at the residence, what can they fix? make sure that, see if there is you have maintenance personnel that services that particular location. And if so, they should at least be aware of what you're doing. And, some folks are not only handy with fixing appliances or door jams or whatever it might be, but, could also help you in terms of rebooting a Wi-Fi router and making sure things are connecting back up. So understand who the staff is at the location, who the caregivers are, what their technical ability is. You want to avoid as many trips to the location as you can. And one way to do that is to know who you can lean on there, you're going to be able to coach through the phone to reconnect something that may have lost connection. The internet goes out, the Alexa no longer has connectivity, the internet comes back up, and the Alexa is still giving off some sort of an error that it can't connect. Coaching somebody at the house over the phone to do the reset is way better than you driving. I'm telling you stuff way better than you driving out a half an hour to do that reset, which might only take 10 minutes, and then driving all the way back. So make sure you know who you can lean on there. And there's more folks you should have on speed dial. So who is the circle of support for that location? Make sure you know who the site coordinator is, who the DSPs are that are assigned to that location, maybe the regional manager for that area. Obviously the family, the caregiver, and the guardian. There's, with technology in there, right, you may need them and they may need you because something may stop working and they have a question. And we'll talk a little bit more about getting those folks up to speed on the technology a little bit later. And then your vendors. So if you are using a Dose Health, MedDispense, I'm just going to throw out names. It's just vendors. If you're using Sensi AI, if you're using Boundary Care, I'm not endorsing any of them. Just who some of these vendors are. They presented to us. Make sure you understand what they can help you fix with their product. How do you contact them? How do you file a ticket with them? What's their expected response time? Do they have a 2-day response time? Do they have a 2-hour response time? All of that matters because you're going to have backup plans for when something doesn't work, and having a good idea of when the issue is going to be addressed is going to give you a concept of how long the backup plan is going to need to be in place. And then, as always, like, who do you have a relationship with at the vendor? If your ticket's not getting resolved, can you make a separate phone call and say, hey, I've got ticket 1309. It's been open for a week now. Nobody's resolving it. Can you push it? So, that sort of typical, leaning on that relationship to help try to get the issue resolved if it's not being resolved within their commitment time frame. I'm going to pause there, right? So that's all sort of a little bit like pre-installation and work. Is there any questions? I'm throwing a lot of info at you. Okay, good. All right, so some tools of the trade. I think as tech champions, most of you kind of didn't sign up to wear a tool belt per se. But if you're going to be present during the installs, or whomever is going to be helping keep things running after the installs, you really want to have a small tool bag available to you. Nothing crazy. Doesn't hurt to have a hammer, 3 or 4 Phillips heads and flathead screwdrivers, maybe a couple wrenches, a tape measure, a level. Again, a lot of that will never get used, but some of it will get used. And then like the weird special tools. So I can't tell you how many times I arrived at a site that had a Ring doorbell camera that was having an issue, and I needed, it's got a somewhat of a proprietary screwdriver nut. It's like a five head nut, and not having that in my bag, I was not happy at that moment. So it just makes it a little more challenging to work with. And so always have, like, if you do have things like Ring doorbells, and there's probably other stuff that require. Oh, I love it. Thanks, Brad. Great suggestion. Double-sided Gorilla Tape is fantastic. And yeah, backup batteries. So backup equipment, we did a lot of Ring doorbells at the provider I worked for, and I ended up, through some attrition, folks exiting, I ended up with like three Ring doorbells extra, and that was great because I always had them with me, and if there was a true problem, it's not like I had to go out and buy a new one to replace the one that had broken. I had these other ones that I could then reconfigure. So I would actually have backup devices in some situations. Backup batteries, as Brad suggested, regular batteries or ones that are specific to the device. Various parts. Can't think of quite an example of that, but if it's a device you use a lot of, there may be mounting brackets or things, sets of screws that are extra that come with the installation. Save that stuff because you never know when you're going to go in. Amy says a drill, absolutely. The power strips are mandatory. Just have a wide variety of types of power strips with you because inevitably you're going to need them, and different configurations of them. And then I always had Wi-Fi extenders. Very frequently, when Wi-Fi is weak, one of the solutions is to set up, and this can be part of your initial order, is to get Wi-Fi extender to make sure the Wi-Fi supports the tech you're putting in. That's fully legit. But I ended up with some extra Wi-Fi extenders, right? So I would go out to a location, and maybe the Wi-Fi wasn't bolstered where it needed to be in the home, and I would plug that, get that set up and boost the Wi-Fi that way, just based on having that extra piece. You don't have to have that extra piece, but it's a pain sometimes to go find the Best Buy or the Walmart or whoever local has it, because they might not be that local. So it's just, adds an hour of your time to go and get the replacement piece. All good suggestions. Thanks, Brad and Amy, and anybody else who chimed in there. Extension cords, yeah, absolutely, Amy. In addition to the power strips, actual just extension cords. Okay, so now it's been installed, and we want to keep it up and running. And so, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We've all heard that over and over. So you want to have regular check-ins, both virtually and in person. And basically, what I would do is daily, I would look at any vendor dashboards or anything that gives you insight into whether or not the devices are working properly. So almost all the devices you're going to put in related to remote support or any alerting devices are going to have some either app or dashboard that you can pull up that's going to show you the health of the devices for that solution. So you should have just a daily 5-minute routine in the morning. Pull it up. Do I see anything that is red, indicating the device is offline? You should also set it up so you get alerted if things go offline. But it's always good to just check as well. Excuse me. And also, in the case where you do have remote support and there are alerts related to it, this is a good time to check and make sure any alerts that were sent overnight or over the past 24 hours were acknowledged by the staff accordingly. So just look for red flags, like alerts that haven't gone acknowledged yet, and do follow up on those. You can also do, some weekly reports just to see how frequently device maybe was offline. I'm not sure. I'm trying to recall if I actually did a weekly report, but it's good. It's good once a week to take a look at all the dashboards for all the locations and flag any issues that presented themselves that week or have been recurring. Recurring issues are really, really big to identify and try to tackle because they'll start to drive you crazy on the fourth or fifth occurrence. And then regular in-person maintenance checkups. So you actually want to go out there and maybe it's monthly. You got to figure out what cadence works for you. Part of that is how far away the location is. Part of it is, are you the one that needs to do the walkthrough, or can you rely on somebody else to do the walkthrough for you? But it should be in person, and it's another walkthrough like we did earlier on, where we were looking at power outlets, and the Wi-Fi signal strong, and all that stuff. But do that walkthrough. You know where you installed equipment. Is all that equipment that you installed where it's supposed to be? Is it all plugged in? Is it all operational? Is the Wi-Fi signal better or worse than it was? If it's worse, it's possible somebody moved a Wi-Fi extender, unplugged a Wi-Fi extender, all sorts of things. Are all the sensors you installed? So maybe you have a motion detector somewhere, or you've got a door or a window sensor, or you've got the bed sensors, water detectors, anything like that. So, are they all where they're supposed to be? And are they all working? And you can test a few of them. If you've got 15 sensors in the house, I wouldn't go around and test all of them individually. The dashboard should show you if they're offline, but it doesn't hurt to just, open a window and open a door and make sure you're hearing a chime or it's registering on the dashboard or the app that activity happened. So all of these walkthroughs are going to help you flag potential issues. And my experience was I had a few locations that were problematic where we had to take additional measures. So frequent unplugging of things, like a central hub that we needed to run the whole kind of operation. It getting unplugged, whether purposefully or accidentally. We needed to actually just put a little, like a wooden, like a little box around it, basically, so that that particular item could not be unplugged from the wall. So that, something like that. And I knew that was happening, I could tell because my walkthroughs revealed, hey, this is a common problem. So let's just get in front of it now and install something that's going to kind of solve that problem. All right, and then there's the security concerns. You're going to have a lot of apps, a lot of dashboards from vendors. You're going to have a lot of staff, and a lot could mean 2 or 3, who need to access some of that information regularly. So the first thing I'll say is this is one of the reasons you want to have a good partnership with your IT, because they should have pretty good guidelines established on, rules for setting up passwords and not sharing passwords, and where to manage passwords. So have a good discussion with them. Explain to them what you're doing. Talk to them about the give them a specific scenario. Hey, we're putting in a Ring doorbell at 3 different locations, and I'm going to have the main account is going to be mine, and I'm going to share out to those cameras to other folks. What does this need to look like to be blessed by IT? So make sure you just have an open, good conversation with them. They'll be able to answer and solve a lot of your questions too, especially if you're unsure on some of the security issues. I suggest using a password manager application. I use one called LastPass, but there are many types of password managers out there. So it's a secure way to manage your passwords, and you can always have them because there's for LastPass at least, and the others, there's an app, so I can log in securely on my phone and see all of my passwords. And when you start talking about multiple locations with possibly multiple passwords, you want to have them organized and accessible very easily. And then make sure you know who's going to be the admin of all of the accounts at the residence. Doesn't necessarily need to be the tech champion. You can train up the site supervisor or whatever your terminology might be for who runs that site or that residence. And you want to give somebody permission to add and remove people from access. And it should be somebody who is comfortable with technology and doing that. And so for each of the locations, excuse me, have an admin. And that person should be actively managing access. So we all know that there's turnover. Staff members sometimes get shifted from one location to another, and that becomes like a small piece of the job, is to make sure that if Paul leaves and either leaves the company or leaves to go work at another location, that I've removed him from the first location and I've added him in with access to the other location. All of that stuff needs to be actively managed. I don't mean day to day, but you need to be aware of the staffing situation there. And then one of the real challenges is two-factor authentication. I'm sure you have this on many of your apps that you use regularly now. So this is, you log in with username and password, and you are asked, hey, can we email you the code or can we text the code to you? Or you've already got a number or an email address set up with that app, and it's going to send the code to that one email or phone number. This gets super challenging because it means if you are the person who set up the account and used your phone number as the two-factor authentication, then in some way you have to be involved in any of the fixing that goes on. Ring doorbell goes offline because it loses access to the Wi-Fi. Somebody, maybe it's not you, goes out to fix the Ring doorbell camera and get it reconnected. In that process, they may need to go through some setup that requires two-factor authentication. They're there on site. Ring sends the two-factor authentication to you, and you're in a meeting someplace. So you can see how that's a very challenging thing, because there's somebody there actively trying to fix it, and they need another person engaged at a key moment, and you may not be available. I don't have a great solution for this. I have some suggestions, and if you get to the point where you're trying to manage this, I'm happy to talk with you one-on-one. But it's important to know that this is going to be a challenge for you at some point. And And there's ways to manage it, but there's kind of no perfect way that I've found to really make sure multiple people can help with the fix, even though only one person can kind of authorize any changes. All right, I think I'm going to do an entirely separate speaker series, almost exclusively on that sort of a thing, like give you some scenarios and situations. But I'm not going to go any deeper on it today. Okay, so next you've got your staff, caregivers, the beneficiary themselves. They're your support staff, but what you're going to find out is you need to support your staff. And the main message on this slide is that you want to make technology part of the standard onboarding process for anybody who's working at that residence, that location. And it should be part of the regular meetings that are that staff hold around that location. The shift training is all meant to create a mindset within the organization to think about technology. Excuse me. And that goes for thinking about technology as a way to provide support to an individual. But it also is about making technology, excuse me, it's about making technology part of the regular conversation at your organization. So a lot of the DSPs have gone through the 5-hour initial shift training so that they begin to build that mindset. Your organization needs to reinforce that by making technology part of your regular meetings. So, as I said, carve out time at the weekly staff meeting to talk about the technology. Does anybody have questions about how it works? Have they run into an issue over the past week? Excuse me again. Have they have they had an issue in the past week? Has the beneficiary mentioned something, complained about something? So make sure the staff's talking about it, basically. But just remember, as great as your staffs are, and as much training as you're going to give them and keep them up to date, they are going to, or some staff members at least, be all the things that have listed there on the screen. Some folks are going to be technophobic. They're definitely going to forget logins and passwords. We hope they don't share logins and passwords. My experience is it happens. They won't log in at all. Great way to avoid some of the challenges with the tech is to just not use it. They might change their phone number, so text messages or alerts are going to the wrong place. They're going to unplug stuff. They're going to reboot stuff, all of that. And there's going to be staff turnover. And that's why I say making technology part of the standard onboarding at that location is crucial because not only do you want that person to understand who they're giving care to, but they need to fully understand how care is being provided. And that includes like, what devices do you have? What do those devices do? Who do they call if they have a question or a challenge with the device? All right, and now I'm almost ready to wrap up. So your help desk is probably you, the tech champion. Possibly you can corral your IT team into helping. Basically what I mean by help desk is, do the beneficiaries, caregivers, and staff know who to call if something's not working? How will the person that gets called track those issues? They're easy to track when there's only 1 or 2 questions. It's a little tougher when there's 10 or more open issues. And that can be something, that can be a spreadsheet. You don't have to go out and buy software to do it. And then who will fix the issues and in what time frame. So if I'm a staff member or a beneficiary or a caregiver and I call you and I say, oh, the med dispenser is not alerting at the right period of time and we missed our last 2 doses because we didn't hear the alarm. Who knows what happened, but it's not alarming for them. You want to be very clear, so sort of basic help desk support stuff, who the owner of fixing it is, and what time frame you expect to be out. So people love expectations. So they want to know who they can call if it's not getting fixed, and they want to know when they, hey, it's not going to get fixed till Friday. We can't be out there till Friday. That's good. They may not like it, but you've set an expectation. All right, and then lastly, part of what your technology plan is for the residents, for the beneficiary, is to list out a backup. So when you fill out the tech recommendation and implementation plan, you are filling out a section for each piece of technology, what the tech is, what outcome it's supposed to serve, and then what happens if it fails. And you list out 3, 4, 5 steps that you're going to take. You're going to alert the staff that it's not working. The staff's going to go back to the paper method, or they're going to just all be aware that they won't get alerts for this period of time. All of that. Whatever the backup plan you laid out, as soon as you get that issue reported into you, you should make sure the staff knows they need to start working off of that backup plan. And that's why we have you do it up front before you even install the technology. You list out what happens if this piece of technology fails. So lean on that. And that's all I have. I got in 1 minute under my goal, so I'm happy. But I didn't give much room for questions. So fire away if you've got questions. Did I scare anybody? That was not my intent, but sometimes that's the result. Amy's not scared. I hear that. I see the head shaking now. Okay, that's good. I hope I can share this. So I did get as I was prepping this presentation yesterday morning, I did get an email from Amy about her challenging tech situation. And I just one. I don't mean to laugh, but it is sort of par for the course, and there will be more of many. One of many. Okay, yeah. This stuff can be fragile, and like I said at the beginning, when you're just trying to manage it in your own house, so you, spouse, partner, kid, couple kids, that already can ruin a Saturday afternoon if something breaks, right? But when you've got 10 locations, 20 locations, you need to have a real structure in place for how this gets fixed and stuff gets addressed. All right, that's all I had for you. I hope everybody, I don't think we meet again until after the new year. So happy New Year to everybody. Enjoy your holiday season. Enjoy any time off that you have. Certainly reach out to me with questions on any of this stuff afterwards, or when you start to experience it. I'm happy to consult as best I can. And we'll all have a good rest of your day and a good next few weeks.